Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I'm continuing my Hellraiser reviews in this pack now. I've moved on to from the 2-pack I was on for the first 2 movies. We're beginning this. We're talking about Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. This film came out in 1992, 4 years. I didn't realize how long it had been. 4 years after the previous movie, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 in 1988. And this film coming out in 1992, it has a little bit of that late 80s, early 90s slasher feel. And yeah, it gets away a little bit from the original kind of gothic fantasy, kind of small scale for the first movie, kind of a little bit of a larger scale and lore expansion. In that second movie, we kind of scale it down again to being more of just a straight out slasher movie with tons of gore, tons of creepiness and fun and weirdness. If you're looking for more of that, this is probably going to be your favorite Hellraiser movie. I have another Hellraiser movie that I love. It's my personal favorite, and I'll get there when I review it. But I'll tell you right now, this particular one's one of the best of the franchise. Even as a Christian who gets bothered by some of the imagery in here because of how much it creeps me out, it still really gets to me. It's a very effective movie, but it's also a very fun movie. Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth really gets a lot of things right, even if it's not really what most people would consider, at least big fans of the first 2 movies would consider a good Hellraiser movie. Now, what is the story on this one? Well, basically, as you know, from the end of Hellbound Hellraiser 2, we start off, or we end that movie, let me try this again. We end that movie with a giant column coming out of the Julia mattress at the end of that movie that has Penhead and the little baby with the stitch mouth and all that attached to this thing. One skeleton cackling as it humps another. It's hilarious. I never realized what that was until I watched Hellraiser 2 yesterday. Anyway, in this movie we pick up with that lore, and I have to give these first original 4 movies, I'm watching Bloodlines right now, you have to give it to them because each of these movies at least tries to take the event of the end of the last movie and do something with it, especially 2, 3, and 4. Anyway, it really amazed me and impressed me with how much fun I had this time around. This is the most fun watch I've ever had after seeing this at least 2 times, 3 times. I think I've seen it about 3 times now. And it's a good flick in my opinion. Actually, it's one of my favorite Hellraisers. I actually like it more than Part 1 and Part 2, even though I would agree with most people those 2 are more well-made for what they are as fantasy types of movies and what they're trying to be. Taking Penhead, making him a straight-up slasher villain, kind of pushing the other Cenobites to the side, that's what this movie's doing. And again, in a very effective way. It makes it a lot more fun. But Penhead in this movie is part of a building who's bought by a fellow named J.P. Monroe. The actor who plays him does a really good job, by the way. He's kind of a young, just snobby scumbag. I love him. I think he does a really good performance for this character. He really fits into this. He buys this statue sculpture thing of Penhead and everything, but Penhead isn't able to talk. None of the things that were there at the end of Hellraiser 2 are really there anymore. It's just kind of sculptures of naked women and that kind of thing. And Penhead doesn't talk anymore on this column. So basically, when he buys this club, or the space he turns into a club, and he also has like the column and everything there. Basically, something happens. He gets some blood on this column, and Penhead wakes up and starts telling him, kind of like what Julia and Frank had done in the first 2 movies about wanting people to bring sacrifices to them so they could, you know, kill them and eat them, whatever. And that's basically what Penhead is doing for this movie. And I think it's kind of a genius setup. And even in this column, for a big chunk of the movie, when Doug Bradley literally has to stand inside of a small box to be part of a column, just having his head stick out with the makeup on. The dude does such a great job, and to me he puts in his best performance from this point on, mainly with this movie, as Penhead, because of the kind of humor, the inflection on the jokes that he makes, and again the puns. There's a lot of them in this movie, but especially coming from him. He's just genius here. Now, with that J.P. Monroe character, he's scared of Penhead, but he kind of being a scummy, evil person, decides to work with Penhead, thinking it'll be overall for his greater good and help him out in the long run. Because he's also kind of like Frank was in the original movie. He thinks he's just out for pleasure, that's all he really wants, that's all he really cares about is himself. And Penhead exploits that. Anyway, we have another side story kind of tied to that a little bit and eventually becomes very, very involved with a lady, I cannot remember her name as the character. I'm really bad with character names. If it's not a super important character like Bilbo Baggins or Luke Skywalker, my brain doesn't care. Her name is Joey. She's played by Terry Farrell, and she's an investigator, journalist type who's trying to get more of her career developed, and things just kind of fall through. She kind of has bad luck, but she has a beautiful apartment and everything. She's really taken care of with her career and what she does. She basically starts to follow this little mystery about J.P. Monroe. She starts to kind of wonder what's going on with that. She actually becomes friends with the ex-girlfriend of J.P. Monroe, who comes to live with her, named Terry, who I think that actress is very good too. I think everybody in the movie, for me personally, as cheesy and as goofy and silly as Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth can get, I think everybody puts in a really solid performance. I enjoy everybody in the movie. And I think this is really the first time I actually really paid attention, and I had fun the first 2 times I saw this, but I think this time, my 3rd or 4th time, whatever this time is, watching this, I had a really good time, even more so than I ever had. It just seemed like it really clicked this time. You ever had that with a movie? That's what happened to me this time around. This is one of my favorite Hellraiser movies at this current point, watching this, and I like all the characters. Again, I like JP, even though he's a scumbag. The performance there, really good. That actor is cast very well. The girl playing Joey, very good. The girl playing Terry, very good. And there are a lot of people in here, and a lot of fans I think will get mad, because the Cenobites, as I said, are kind of put to the side. Penhead is the leader as usual. At this point is when they really try to make him the face of the Hellraiser franchise, even though they already did that with Hellraiser 1, Hellbound Hellraiser 2. He is the poster child of these movies, literally. So, with this movie, the other people that come in by the end of this movie, Hellraiser, essentially, or not Hellraiser, Penhead starts to turn people into Cenobites, some of them. And that's weird. I love the club, by the way, that J.P. Monroe makes in this movie with that column and everything around the column. He makes a club out of it, and like one side is like your amazingly performance to rock music stuff. I love the soundtrack in this movie, by the way. I'll get to that in a minute, more at least. But one side of this huge club is like your teenager partygoers. On the other side, it's like this fancy pinky in the air types of dining, and it's hilarious to me. I love that. I thought the humor in here, even in the directing, going from one scene to the next for that club, was genius. It was very well done, very thought out, very well put together, in my opinion. The writing of the film, again, lots of puns, lots of jokes, more of a slasher thing. There's a lot of gore in the movie, and the practical effects really make up for that. They are fantastic. There is a couple of moments, one in particular involving alcohol in a glass that turns into something, and that is horrible CGI. But the practical effects, everything in here, including a particular slaughter scene, is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. There are some phenomenal gore and splatterpunk elements to this. If you're a big splatterpunk fan, if you're a big slasher fan, you're going to get a lot out of this movie if you haven't seen it before. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, you should really take the time and rewatch it. As goofy as it can get. Sometimes it might cross the line a little too much into becoming too goofy for some people. With the writing, with the events that take place later on, with Penhead turning people into Cenobites, that gets a little bit over the top, but I love it. It fits for this kind of movie. It might not fit for the franchise. I can understand why people might hate this movie because of that, but man, you can't tell me you don't have a good time while watching this because of how wild and insane it gets. The look of the movie feels like an early 90s, late 80s movie, but it feels like there's a budget behind it. It kind of surprised me. Of course, these first 4 films of the Hellraiser franchise are the only movies to have ever gotten a theatrical release, even though the next one doesn't really deserve it. This one, I could see people saying they hated back in the day, even though it feels like it's got a really solid budget to it. It kind of surprises me every time I see it. All the pyrotechnic stuff, all of the explosions, all the different things that are in here that look good. They're well directed, they're well placed in the movie, along with the practical effects and everything else. Again, music. I really want to get into this. The music maintains and meshes that weird opera type music that works so well and is so beautiful and really kind of the spirit of these movies from the first 2 movies. It takes that and it puts it into this, but it incorporates it also, since we have a club scene in this movie most of the time for J.P. Monroe's club. The music that plays there, these like live band performances are amazing. The end credits song, I think it's Hellraiser, but it's like, what is that band? I love the band. I've always loved this band since I saw them on like Guitar Hero back in the day. I think it was Guitar Hero. God, what are they? Ace of Spades band, you know, they make a song called Ace of Spades. I think they made a song that was like a Triple H WWE song for an intro. Anyway, I don't know. You probably know the band I'm talking about. I cannot remember them right now. I'm not going to waste your time by trying to remember it. Great band. Really check them out if you haven't heard them before. But the music in here, between the old opera-esque music and then the newer stuff with just straight up rock band music, it's excellent. I love it. It's my favorite part of the entire film. It just really makes this movie move and bump, and it works really well, in my opinion. And with that being said, too, one of my biggest complaints about the first two movies for me was that kind of, they feel soap opera-like, but they also feel like a straight-up opera, you know? And that doesn't really click with me a lot of the time. I like soap opera elements to like my TV shows and stuff, like the first early seasons of Arrow and Flash, but I don't like it when a movie is that. And I don't think horror works in that way either. I don't care what other Hellraiser fans say. I just think the first two movies, for me, they just don't click because of that. It's too opera-like. It just feels like everybody's going to start singing, especially the villain in Hellraiser 2 at the end. He basically does sing. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. You've seen the movie. You probably know what I'm talking about. But the music here really makes up for a lot of that. It doesn't have that opera feeling, not just with the music, but with the performances, with the script. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be this massively broad thing. But I will say this, it doesn't really expand on lore either. It really doesn't. And I think a lot of people will be mad over that, going from Hellraiser 1 to 2 and then to this, where it feels like a big scale down. But I think personally this is a lot better than Hellraiser really ever deserved for being a slasher franchise. Say what you will, maybe it didn't start out that way, but it eventually, whether you like it or not, became a slasher franchise. So for me, when it comes to Hellraiser 3 in this box set, I think it's a great watch, and I really, really like it. It's heavily flawed. The puns are so eye-rolly, you know? It's goofy. It's a goofy, goofy movie, I promise you. If I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, for my personal taste and what I like and what I enjoyed the hell out of this movie, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's really good. It might not be faithful to the movie, or the movie series, or the original 2 movies. It might not be, but you tell me this is a misstep. Maybe it was to you if you're a big fan of those first 2, but for me, this is where it should have been to begin with, in my opinion. Anyway, 4 out of 5 stars for Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. As I said, I'm currently in the middle of Hellraiser Bloodlines, which is number 4. I've already watched Hellraiser Inferno before the new trailer for the reboot came out, so I was already planning on reviewing that anyway. And here we are. So I pretty much have like 3 reviews coming out to you, back to back, that I'm going to record today, back to back. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth? What do you think about it? Is it your favorite Hellraiser movie? If somebody told me that, if somebody told me that, I would totally 100% understand. I think a lot of people would. I think for people who happen to be bored by the first 2 movies, and I know there are people out there, I've talked to people who have said that, I don't think it's boring, but if people do, this is a great place for you to just jump right in, I promise you. You don't really need to see the first 2 to understand what's going on here, but you'll appreciate the little subtleties like the column doing what Julia and Frank did, and Penhead's requests and that kind of thing. I think you'll appreciate all that. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below, guys. I would love to hear what you have to say about Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. Put your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.